The gravy spoon slipped from my fingers and shattered everything I thought I knew about my family. My name is Victoria Cross. I'm 35 years old, and what happened that Thanksgiving changed the course of my entire life. Some might call it selfish. Others would say it was long overdue. But when you've spent decades being invisible in your own family, sometimes the only way to be seen is to disappear completely. The ceramic kitchen floor of my parents' Malibu beach house echoed with the clatter of that falling spoon. Brown liquid splattered across my apron like some twisted art project. While 15 feet away in the dining room, my family's laughter rang out without me. They'd started dinner without me. Again. Mom had promised we'd all sit down together once everything was ready. But that was before my brother Cameron's Range Rover pulled into the driveway with his designer luggage and million-dollar smile. I'd been there since Tuesday morning, chopping vegetables, seasoning the turkey, preparing side dishes while Cameron rolled in just before dinner with nothing but a bottle of wine someone probably gave him as a corporate gift. From my position on the kitchen floor, wiping up gravy with shaking hands, I could see them through the doorway. Mom straightening Cameron's collar, Dad pouring him more wine, everyone leaning in to catch his latest success story about closing some massive deal in Miami. Not one of them noticed my absence. 3 weeks earlier, Mom had started the family group text with her usual holiday enthusiasm. Thanksgiving planning. We'll cook whatever Cameron likes this year since he's been so busy with his promotion. I'd suggested maybe trying something different, going to that new waterfront restaurant, giving everyone a break from cooking. Mom's response came swiftly. Traditions matter, dear. Besides, you're so good in the kitchen. Translation: you're so useful in the kitchen. Standing there with gravy-stained hands, something shifted inside me. Like tectonic plates grinding before an earthquake. I filled the gravy boat again, walked into that dining room, and set it down with a satisfying thunk on their pristine white tablecloth. 5 pairs of eyes glanced up briefly before returning to Cameron, who was mid-story about his golf game with some potential investor. "Honey," Mom said without looking at me, "could you grab more ice for Cameron's drink?" The request hung in the air between us. I'd spent 2 days cooking while Cameron hadn't lifted a finger. The word rose to my lips before I could stop it. "No." The conversation died instantly. Cameron's mouth hung open mid-sentence. Mom blinked rapidly, her social smile cracking. Dad's face darkened as he set down his fork. "I said no," I repeated, my voice steadier than I felt. "He drove 2 hours. I've been cooking for 2 days." The silence stretched between us, filled with 35 years of unspoken rules I'd just shattered. But something had changed. For the first time in my life, I'd pushed back against the current instead of letting it sweep me along. I poured myself a full glass of wine, took my seat at the table, and didn't rush back to the kitchen. Aunt Margaret caught my eye from across the table and gave me the slightest nod of approval. That small rebellion should have been the end of it. But it was only the beginning. After dinner, while everyone retired to the living room, I escaped to the kitchen to breathe. Mom's iPad sat open on the granite counter, her Facebook page glowing with notifications. I shouldn't have looked. I'd never been the snooping type. But something pulled me forward. Her most recent post stopped my heart. "Excited for Cameron's special Thanksgiving menu. Can't wait to taste what my talented son suggested for our family gathering." My talented son. Not a word about who shopped for ingredients, prepped for 2 days, or woke at 5 that morning to start the turkey. I scrolled down with trembling fingers. Photo after photo from birthdays, Easter, Christmas, dozens of images of Cameron smiling with Mom and Dad. In some pictures, I spotted my elbow or the back of my head as I carried dishes or cleaned up in the background. Not one photo featured me front and center. Not one. 35 years of being overlooked, documented in digital proof. When I returned to serve dessert, the conversation had shifted to family trips. Like our Cabo vacation last spring, Dad said warmly, and the knife nearly slipped from my hands. What Cabo vacation? I asked. An awkward silence fell before Mom laughed nervously. Oh, it was just a quick weekend getaway. You were so busy with work. I was never invited. They'd gone on a family vacation and never even told me about it. But the real blow came from Aunt Patricia, Mom's sister, who suddenly announced, "Speaking of family, Cameron, I've decided you should have Grandma's china cabinet. It would look perfect in your new dining room." The cabinet I'd admired since childhood. The one I'd hoped would someday hold my own collection of vintage dishes. "We want to make sure these things stay in the family," Patricia added, as if I weren't sitting right there. As if I weren't family. "Cameron needs it more anyway," Dad chimed in. "Especially with how stretched he is financially with the new house. Your mother and I helped with the down payment, but these mortgage rates are brutal." The pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. The same parents who'd called me financially irresponsible when I bought my modest condo 3 years ago with no help from them had handed Cameron a down payment for a beach house. As I mechanically cut and served pie, standing while they remained seated, the truth crystallized. My only value to this family was what I provided in service. If I stopped serving, would I cease to exist in their eyes completely? The question haunted me for weeks. 3 weeks later, my phone chimed with a familiar group text alert. Exciting news! Mom had written. Cameron is hosting Christmas at his new beach house. Everyone's so thrilled. The follow-up arrived 30 seconds later. Victoria, I've made a list of your dishes. The usual stuffing everyone loves, your cranberry relish, those little appetizers with the puff pastry, and maybe your chocolate pecan pie? Cameron mentioned how much he misses your cooking. Then, "And honey, could you come early to help set up? Maybe around 9? Cameron has an important client breakfast that morning." The audacity was breathtaking. Not "would you mind making," or "if you have time," but a direct assignment of labor. As if my time, my career, my life held no value compared to Cameron's important client breakfast. I stared at my phone, my hands starting to shake. This wasn't just about cooking anymore. This was about 35 years of being treated like hired help by the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. That night I couldn't sleep. The insomnia had been getting worse as Christmas approached, my body rebelling against obligations my mind tried to accept. At 3:17 a.m., I gave up and pulled out a notebook. "Things I want," I wrote at the top. Then I stared at the empty page for 20 minutes. What did I want? Had anyone ever asked me that question? Had I ever asked myself? The next morning, I did something unprecedented. I told my boss I was taking Friday off. Not asking. Telling. That weekend, instead of meal planning for Cameron's Christmas extravaganza, I went out with friends from work. We had karaoke and terrible drinks, and I laughed until my sides hurt. For the first time in months, no one expected anything from me except my presence. Sunday evening, Mom called. "Victoria, I'm finalizing Christmas plans. Did you get my text about coming early to help Cameron set up?" My knuckles turned white around the phone. "I'm busy too." The silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. "What's that supposed to mean?" she finally asked, her voice tight. "It means exactly what I said. I have my own life and career. I'm not just sitting around waiting to be useful to Cameron. This is Christmas, Victoria. Family comes first." "Does it?" "Because it seems like Cameron comes first, and I'm just expected to serve him." Mom gasped. "That's not fair. He works so hard." "So do I." The words burst from me with unexpected force. I work hard too, Mom. But no one in this family has ever acknowledged that. No one has ever asked what I need or want. It's always about making things perfect for Cameron. After that call, something crystallized in my mind. I didn't need their approval to be worthy. I never did. I opened my laptop and began drafting an email to my family. The words flowed with surprising ease, explaining my decision not to attend Christmas at Cameron's house. I laid out the years of unbalanced expectations, the toll on my health and career, my need to create boundaries that honored my worth. An hour after I sent it, my phone rang. Mom again. Victoria, we need to discuss Christmas arrangements. Cameron wants to know which dishes you're bringing. I won't be coming to Cameron's for Christmas. That's ridiculous. Of course you're coming. I've made other plans. What other plans could possibly be more important than family? My plans are important because they're mine. For the first time in decades of conversations, my mother had no immediate response. Well, she finally managed. I'm sorry if you felt unappreciated. I didn't feel unappreciated. I was unappreciated. There's a difference. The distinction mattered, and we both knew it. 2 days later, she asked me to meet her for coffee. I almost said no, but curiosity won out. I wanted to see what card she'd play next. The coffee shop felt like neutral territory as Mom sat across from me. A leather photo album spread between us like evidence in a trial. She flipped to pictures of Cameron as a child, her finger tracing his kindergarten graduation photo while completely skipping over my picture beside him. Your brother needs you, Victoria, she said. He has important clients coming. He wants to impress them with a traditional family Christmas. I pulled out my own evidence. 2 photos side by side. The first showed last Easter's gathering with Cameron centrally positioned between our parents while I was barely visible at the edge, carrying a tray of deviled eggs. The second from Thanksgiving showed Cameron raising a toast while I stood in the background, refilling water glasses. 6 holidays in a row where I cooked every dish, I said, sliding forward a handwritten list. 32 family gatherings where I arrived hours early to set up and stayed hours after to clean. For birthdays of mine that were rescheduled because they conflicted with Cameron's plans. Mom's face tightened. We appreciate everything you do. You appreciate everything I provide. There's a difference. I pulled out my phone and showed her the confirmation email. I'm spending Christmas in the Florida Keys with friends who see me as more than what I can provide for them. Her face drained of color. You've already booked it? We leave Christmas Eve morning. But what about Cameron's dinner? The genuine confusion in her voice said everything. She truly couldn't imagine a world where my brother's needs didn't automatically supersede mine. Cameron has 2 hands that work perfectly well and a kitchen full of appliances with instruction manuals. She looked at me like I'd suggested he perform brain surgery. He doesn't know how to cook a turkey. YouTube exists, I said simply. I learned most of my recipes there when no one taught me. When our bill came, I took it before she could reach for her purse. This one's on me, I said, placing my credit card down. No strings attached. It was a small gesture, but the symbolism wasn't lost on either of us. As we stood to leave, I touched her arm gently. When you're ready to have a daughter instead of a servant, I'll be here. I've always been here. You just need to see me. That Christmas Eve morning, I boarded a plane to Key West with my friend Miranda from work. As we settled into our seats, my phone buzzed with family group chat notifications. Aunt Margaret had sent a photo of Cameron standing in his kitchen, looking lost with the caption, "Apparently the turkey doesn't come with written instructions." I felt a strange lightness knowing my absence had created such disruption. Not from spite, but from the realization that my contributions had been substantial enough to leave a noticeable gap. The Florida Keys sun warmed my face as I stretched out on the beach beside Miranda. Laughter bubbled from my chest as our friend Jake performed an exaggerated impression of his boss. For once, I wasn't bustling around serving others. I was simply present, soaking in the moment. "Victoria, get in this picture," Miranda said, framing a photo of our impromptu holiday gathering. I slid between Jake and Miranda, smiling without reservation. The camera captured my relaxed posture and genuine happiness. 3 days in paradise, and I hadn't once apologized for taking up space. But the real twist came 11 months later. I was hosting my own Thanksgiving in my Orlando condo when my phone rang. Dad's name flashed on the screen, the first time he'd called me directly in years. "Victoria," his voice sounded older, uncertain. "Your mother and I were wondering if we could visit for Christmas." I stood before the wall where I'd hung the photo from that beach Christmas, 5 smiling faces with mine centered and glowing. The contrast to those old Facebook photos was striking. "I'd like that," I said carefully. But things would be different. We'd cook together, not just me serving everyone. And I've planned a friends gathering on Christmas Eve that wouldn't change. The silence stretched between us. "I think we can manage that," he said finally. "Here's what I discovered about revenge. Sometimes the most devastating thing you can do to people who take you for granted is to simply stop being available for them to take." My family spent that first Christmas after my rebellion scrambling to cook their own meals, realizing for the first time how much work I'd been doing behind the scenes. Cameron burned the stuffing. Dad overcooked the turkey. Mom had a meltdown trying to coordinate side dishes. Aunt Patricia actually called to ask if I had any easy recipes she could contribute, apparently having forgotten that she'd given away Grandma's china cabinet to someone who needed it more. The group chat, once filled with demands and assignments for me, fell silent. They had no idea how to function without their reliable kitchen servant. But here's the part that surprised me most. I didn't feel triumphant watching them struggle. I felt sad. Sad that it had taken my complete withdrawal for them to notice my value. Sad that we'd all wasted so many years on this dysfunctional dance of service and neglect. When Dad called to ask about visiting for Christmas, I heard something new in his voice. Respect. Maybe even a little fear that they'd lost me permanently. The truth is, they almost had. That Thanksgiving I hosted in my own home, surrounded by friends who valued me for who I was rather than what I could provide, I realized something profound. I'd spent 35 years trying to earn love through service, not understanding that real love doesn't require you to disappear in order to exist. My parents did visit that Christmas. It was awkward at first, watching Mom actually help with dishes instead of just supervising my work. Dad attempted to mash potatoes and asked genuine questions about my job for the first time in years. Cameron, surprisingly, showed up with homemade cookies, admitting he'd been taking cooking classes. The china cabinet still sits in his dining room, but I no longer care. I've built my own collection of mismatched vintage pieces that tell stories of adventures with chosen family rather than obligations to biological ones. Some relationships can be rebuilt on new terms. Others are too damaged by years of neglect and take-for-granted assumptions. The key is recognizing that you have the power to choose which category yours falls into. My family learned that I wasn't their built-in caterer or cleaning service. I learned that setting boundaries doesn't make you selfish. It makes you visible. And sometimes being seen for the first time is worth the temporary pain of being misunderstood. That gravy spoon hitting the kitchen floor was the sound of everything changing. It just took me 35 years to finally hear it. The best revenge isn't elaborate schemes or public humiliation. Sometimes it's simply refusing to remain invisible in your own life. Sometimes it's choosing yourself when no one else will. My name is Victoria Cross. I'm 36 years old now, and I've never been happier to take up space.